Hey, Real Talk listeners, it's David back here with another episode, and I am with someone who has written probably the most impactful book that I have read, at least in the last year. But honestly, I think as I continue to digest it and give it in bite-sized pieces to my own audience, I really think it's going to prove to be one of the most influential books since getting into the real estate business, period. Today's guest is author and speaker Graham Cochrane. And Graham, welcome to the show, man.
Dude, I'm honored. Thanks for the kind words. I'm glad you enjoyed the book.
Well, hey, you didn't ask me to sell it for you, but I think over the next year, 2025, I'm going to be selling this for you like crazy. And we're going to talk about the book in a little bit. But before we do that, man, for those in my audience who don't know you, can you give us a little bit of a background? Like, who is Graham?
Yeah, I mean, Graham, I would say the common thread in everything I do is I'm an encourager. I speak life into people. And I think I've always viewed myself as a mentor in a way. Uh, but the journey was originally all I wanted to do was be a rock star. So that was the one dream in middle school, high school, college. I mean, write a little bit about that in the book. That turned into okay, that dream didn't quite happen the way I hoped it would, and so had to sort of find myself again and figure out what am I going to do in this world? How can I use my skills? And I stumbled into entrepreneurship during the middle of the Great Recession because I had to. I had a wife and a baby and a mortgage, and we were broke. I was unemployed. We were on food stamps. This is 2009, 2010, and I had to reboot my career, and I just didn't want to go back to an office job because again, I'm that creative type musician type, and it pushed me to ask the questions, could I make money in different ways? And this was before I knew what online business was or the creator economy or whatever we're calling it these days. But I stumbled into creating content originally around my love of music and recording music, and the journey just took off from there. And in the last 7 or 8 years, I've been coaching in business, writing books, mentoring people, speaking, but all along just trying to help people have like light bulbs go off, unlock. And anything you've ever liked in that book in Rebel, I mean, when I write a book or do anything, I'm not doing it to hear myself speak or think. Like I want someone to pick this up and have their life changed, even in a small way, because slight pivots, can take you to a totally different destination in your life. And that's what I want to do for people.
Totally. Well, let me ask you this, Graham. I think there's so many correlations I could draw because real estate for a lot of people is not necessarily a first profession. It's not a first career. I don't meet a lot of 5-year-olds in kindergarten who on career day are saying like, "Oh, my dream is to be a real estate agent." But I work with a lot of agents who fall into this business and they change their life. But I find that they actually have had a kind of a rock bottom experience of their own. And I don't know
Mm.
that you'd describe your experience that way, but like when you have a dream your whole life to be a rock star and it doesn't pan out, like what is that like? And how did you decide to pivot that dream and and launch into something else altogether?
Yeah, man. I mean, when it happened, it was devastating. I felt angry. And I was trying to get a record deal, and I really, really tried hard. And long story short, kept getting rejection letters. I got one offer, but there was no money attached to it, so it wasn't really an offer. They call it a development deal. So when I realized the writing on the wall that hey, this isn't going to happen, and I was graduating from college and I was getting married in 2 months, I needed a job, and that wasn't going to happen. I was disappointed and angry. I was embarrassed because I told everybody, I'm going to be a rock star. I don't know how famous I'm going to be, but you'll see, I'm going to make music videos. I'm going to be on the radio. I'm going to just give it a shot. And so it was embarrassing when people would ask, "Hey, how's the album going? How's the music dream going?" It felt like, your tail between your legs. And I was genuinely surprised. Like this was the only thing I was good at, the only thing I enjoyed doing, like applying myself to. I had no backups, no plan B. I wasn't like, we'll see how this goes, and if it doesn't work out, I'll become a real estate agent. I mean, I had no, I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And I didn't think it was arrogant. I just thought it was logical. Like, this is my skill set. I've done, at this point, I was 22. I've done 10 years of just putting in the reps, and people validated it. So yeah, it was a shock, I think. And then really the problem was, and if you've ever felt this, and anyone listening has maybe felt this, when you have a dream die, this is something I call the identity crisis intersection in the book, which is it hurts so much because your dream is attached to your identity. It's part of who you are. And that was my identity, was Graham the musician. And what's the highest form of Graham the musician? Well, it's to become well paid and well known and to reach the most people. Like, I didn't want to play small as a musician. I wanted to play big. And when that was basically taken away from me or the options disappeared, I was like, well, crap, who am I if I'm not Graham the musician? I haven't thought about it. And so I almost had to go on this journey of rediscovering who is Graham if he's not a professional full-time musician. And that was punishing because I didn't really want to even ask those questions. I only wanted plan A. But what's cool though, and for me, I think it took the recession. I think it took a rock bottom moment because I would have floundered. I was floundering job after job for about 4 years and just providing and doing the right thing, being a good husband and provider, but I didn't like it. Um, but the losing my job made me get creative. And I had no idea what entrepreneurship could look like. I had like I'm sure a lot of real estate agents feel this. They have their in their minds an idea of what being in business looks like, but there's so many different ways to do business, to have autonomy, to have flexibility, to have no cap on your income, things that I'd never heard about. And so you got to get curious about what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And there was even for me, the budding online content creator space, online coach space was still a budding industry. So I didn't even have like courses or books I could read about how to do what I was going to do. I was kind of just seeing how can I add value in the words of John Maxwell, how can I add value to people and how can I make money from it? And it's a wild ride, even to me, to think that it's even possible that even 15, 16 years ago, I was figuring this stuff out and the ride we've been on. But it just goes to show that my identity wasn't Graham the musician. I thought it was. I realized there were so many more layers to who I am and so many more ways to use my gifts and my personality and even the things I like to do or not do and serve different people in different ways and make a living doing it. And I've pivoted multiple times too, from the music guy on YouTube to the business guy to Graham the author, Graham the speaker. I mean, all of these are like new ripples of like, could I do that? Could I do that? And they all are connected to things I love. So yeah, reinvention is beautiful, but it does for me, you have to go through that mourning phase of man, my dream died, my identity died, and I kind of did what I call in the identity crisis intersection, that conformity path. That's one path you can choose. But the path that I encourage people to take is to dream again, even if the dream died. Dream the same dream, dream it 100th time, dream a new dream. For me, I ended up dreaming a new version of the dream. Maybe Graham the rock star wasn't the dream I could pursue, but Graham in front of hundreds of thousands of people per month, and being on camera and producing and performing and being creative and even using music, getting paid a lot more than a musician gets paid. I mean, that's a new dream I didn't even know I could dream, and that's something that's been a wild ride for me to participate in.
So when someone's at this like identity intersection, you mentioned the word curious, and I love that word. I frequently say I think her name was Diana Kokoska, a coach inside of our company, who encouraged us to always come from curiosity, and so like when you're dealing with something that is, I mean, it's identity, it is you, like how do you stay curious in those moments? And then it sounds like you even as you've gone about, like you've been able to perhaps hold your identity in a more like more loosely. I don't know if I'm saying that
Mm.
correctly, but maybe I'll just share it like from my personal, like my formal training back in the day was as a pastor. And so like my whole identity was wrapped up as in like David was going to be the rock star pastor, like 25-year-old
Yep.
old mega church leader. And I lost all of that. And what I've discovered during those years for me was like like I held onto that so tightly. And I
Mm.
think as I've matured a little bit and I've gone through a few of my own identity intersections, maybe my grasp on that has loosened. And so I'm just curious, like, what insights do you have for someone when they're trying to maybe stay more curious about their identity?
Yeah, man. So I kind of, in a way, am the perfect person to talk about this because I typically suck at this, but then I've
Same.
learned how to get good at this. So it's funny, and I can see the difference between me and my wife. I'm the kind of guy that wants to label myself. I want to know who am I, and I like, okay, am I a rock star? Great. I want to be the greatest rock star ever. Okay, no, no. So I'm a YouTuber. Okay, I'm going to be the greatest YouTuber. Whatever. I just want to know my label so I can be fantastic at it. And my wife is like the opposite. She says, "Don't box me in. I don't want to be called any one thing. I want to do whatever I want to do and be able to change my mind." And I don't actually want to change my mind. I really admire the people that do one thing their whole life and they become masters at their craft and they become world class. That's just something that's fascinating to me. But that's not the journey that God's allowed me to go on in terms of that narrow view of what being world class is, which is okay, I'm a musician, I'm a violinist, or I'm a salesman. I'm the best salesman ever. I'm like a Jay Abraham, or I'm like, what are you're real estate your whole life. I haven't been able to have that one thing. So my nature is to want to have the one thing, the one identity. Where I feel like I've been cracked open a little bit as I've seen the fruit of expanding my view of what my identity is. I actually realized I was limiting my worth and limiting my ability to contribute to society because if I think the only way Graham can be great and make an impact is through music, well, I might just go play the music route and I could play music my whole life, but it'll only impact a few people if I don't make it big. But because I got curious about, well, is there another way I can use my gifts or use just who I am? It was very awkward at first. I didn't even know what I was doing, creating content, filming courses. I didn't know what this was becoming. Now you can I teach this stuff for a living. I can reverse engineer it for people. But if I hadn't gone down that path, I wouldn't have realized, dude, I'm impacting more people really as a mentor, thought leader, coach, encourager, first in the music space, then pivoted to the business space. I'm learning more about, oh, my real value isn't that I can sing a song, play guitar, and wear pleather pants and bleach blonde my hair. Like there's a little bit
Although I
more.
bet you look good with bleach blonde hair.
Hey man, it won my wife over. But it's
It was that?
yeah, that's just sad. But I think everyone listening has so much more value than they think. And so you're not who you've been. You're not the role that you're in. You're not your season of life. Like, oh, I'm stay at home dad right now, stay at home mom right now, or I'm unemployed right now. You're not what the economy has done to you. Even business owners, they start a business that fails. They're like, okay, I'm a failed business owner. They almost take on that identity. I can't do that again. You're none of those things. Those are just things you participated in or seasons you're in or roles you played. You are always you, have always been you. And the beautiful thing is once you get a little more in touch with, man, what parts of me are valuable to different kinds of people? And how can I multiply my value to different kinds of people? You may not know the answer to that, but just by getting curious about it and wondering, it leads you down a more interesting path. It might be meandering, it might be long. But now I start to think, David, that like anytime I put a label on something I want to do, like when I first wanted to write my first book, I want to write a book, I want to be an author, or I want to speak on stages now because I miss being on stage like I did as a musician. Even saying I want to be an author or speaker, it's still limiting because to be a speaker, to be a traditional speaker, to go on the circuit, like you're gone 200 nights out of the year and you're constantly, I don't want to do that. So I want to speak and I want to speak and get paid what I'm worth. And I want to speak to the right audiences. I want to make an impact, but like really it's bigger than a speaker. I'm really imagining what is the role that's more than a speaker, more than an author. Like I'm making stuff up as I go, but it's just Graham showing up fully everywhere he goes and finding ways where I see, oh, this connects with people. And then if you need to monetize it, this makes money. And where can you find those overlaps as often as possible? I think there's just so many possibilities and it's way more fun because no one else is doing this. Most people in your industry, I'm sure in the real estate space, everyone thinks the same, acts the same, does the same. And so if you're in the real estate space, whether you're an agent or a broker or whatever, if you could start to get curious about thinking of yourself more than the traditional role that you play, you can become a disruptor, an innovator, and you'll get paid more. You'll have more opportunities than other people just because you decide to step out of the lines that everyone else is afraid to step out. They're fake lines. They just have been there for so long. And it's not that you're hurting anybody else's thing. You're just getting curious about the value you bring and seeing yourself as more than what you do or the role that you're in.
That's really helpful. So, one of the exercises that you like, I'm just gonna say, bring us through, bring me, you brought me through. As I read the book, is this exercise of permission to dream, and so it was a very powerful exercise. I actually went through all of my company sales meetings shortly after you were with us here in Phoenix, and did that exercise with all of them, where they just start writing out these dreams. And I only gave them a few minutes to do it. Um, but man, I've got to tell you, like there were tears within a matter
Wow.
of 3 minutes. There were smiles within the matter of 3 minutes. There were like deep sighs of relief. So
Mm.
I'm just curious, could you kind of walk people through why that exercise is so powerful and why that's like a starting point in one's journey of being what you call a rebel?
Yeah, so I mean that's so powerful that you took so many people through that. I'm grateful that they got that experience. Yeah, so I believe to find yourself, to get to the core of who you are, you have to be a rebel. There's a 5-step process I take people through in the book, and it is an acronym. So the R in rebel is to resolve to dream again. It's kind of like a stake in the ground and says, you know what? We were all natural dreamers when we were kids. We all dreamt of big things like I want to be an astronaut, I want to be an NBA player, to small things like I want to go to this restaurant and have this meal, or I want to be able to eat 1,000 cheeseburgers, like whatever it was. I want a basketball hoop. Like we're desire based creatures. It's the way we're wired. And desire is not a bad thing. Misplaced desire or giving up so many other things for desire at all costs can be destructive, of course, but we're wired for desire. That's why positive incentives are more effective than negative consequences for people's behavior and getting results. And so commission structures work well, things like that. We're desire based creatures and we're born that way. And then when we become adults, either life beats the mess out of our dreams because we were dealt a hard hand or we went through some really hard things. For me, it was losing some jobs, which is nothing compared to, like, I have friends that have lost children, at the age of 5 weeks. It's like punishing. Like life is hard. It could be cancer. It could be someone walks out on you in a relationship, whatever it is. When that kind of stuff happens, it sobers you real quick and you just become more cold. And so you stop dreaming for that reason. Or other people, just because their dreams haven't happened or life hasn't turned out the way they hoped, they kind of want to beat it out of you. And so there's this, we're swimming in a worldview that basically says you don't get what you dream. There's a few lucky few that have this great life or they get whatever they want. The rest of us, it's just not going to be that great. And so if you hear that all the time, smell that, breathe that air all the time, you start to believe it, even if you don't know why. So what I find, especially with adults, is when I give them an exercise like the 50 dreams exercise, where you're just supposed to write down 50 things you want, 50 things you dream of doing one day, being, or having. Those are 3 good categories. Uh, it brings up all kinds of emotions. It brings up tears for some people because there's desires that they know are there. They just don't let themselves think about it. It brings happy tears for people that have forgotten about a dream. Like, oh yeah, I have always wanted to go live in a Spanish speaking country and like speak Spanish with like, but I've never, like, that doesn't make sense. It's not practical. I live here or, I got kids but when you let yourself just go there, and this is not a bucket list of things you have to now go do. This is more about getting data on yourself. I think dreams are clues. I think dreams are data points. You're getting intel on yourself. I think it's so wonderful when people start to just write down a handful of things that they've always wanted or forgot they wanted, or if they never thought about it, if they stopped and thought about it, if they could have anything, do anything, be anything, what would come up in that category? No one has to see this. There's just something human about it because you're like, man, I am a person with hopes and dreams, big or small. And it kind of just humanizes you. You're not a machine. And I'm an entrepreneur. Your listeners are entrepreneurs. I mean, this business will chew you up and spit you out because it's all about producing. And you have a great month, you have a great year, and then the clock resets, and you got to do it again. And you're like, gosh, it's producing. But we're not producers in that sense. We're humans. And so there's something humanizing about the dreams. And what I love about it when I experience people's reaction to it and their experience with it is how different people's dreams are. We think we all want the same thing, like more money and more time. Yeah, but people are way more interesting than that. When you get down to it, you realize they want very specific things that are meaningful to them. And that's why we start there is the more you get clear on what you dream about, could dream about, used to dream about, the better you know yourself because it starts with dreaming and then you go deeper from there. So I think it's a great first step, if nothing else. And I know, like with a book, most people don't read books, which is crazy. Most people who pick up a book only read a chapter or two of it, which is crazy. But I know that, so I try to front load the book. But if you get into if you just do one exercise in the book, and even if they put it down, but they had that experience of, man, I really did used to dream about that, or if I'm being honest, I would love that. It just starts to open up their mind and get them out of the rut of doing the same thing, thinking the same way. And it's just like being around other people. I'm trying to be that friend that's you're around that other person who dreams big, who asks you questions like, what would you want to do? Like if you could do anything. Like I love Tim Ferriss's question, if you were the smartest person in the world and it were impossible to fail, what would you dream of doing, being, or having? Like that's his quote. You need someone in your corner asking you those questions because no one else is going to. Everyone else is going to be like, hey, get those reports in. Hey, sell more next month. Hey, pay the bills. Hey, I need this. And so I want people to at least have that opportunity to consider who they once were or who they could be if they let themselves think about it and just see what happens next.
I don't want to misattribute this to you. Uh, so you'll have to tell me if you really did say this, but didn't you take Tim's quote and modify it just slightly um, to like um, I'm gonna butcher this, Graham, but it was like not even like what would you do if you couldn't fail, but like what would you do if you like knew you were going to fail because failure is sometimes inevitable, but like you knew you could get back up. Was that something that you said or were sharing?
Mm,
Or where did I
I don't
get
think so. I don't know. I don't think so, but I'll steal it. Sure. Let's say I said it.
that? Yeah, it was a very freeing way of looking at it as well because I think sometimes um at least I know I do, and I think people that I coach and that are in my organization, they have that one failure and they immediately divert. And it's like you said earlier, it's like permission to dream might be picking up that same dream again
Hmm.
and going after it once again. It doesn't mean that it's an altogether new dream every single time. Um, and I just think there's encouragement in that because you know what? Like we are gonna mess up. We're gonna fail. We're going to not um, always do things the way that we desire. But I think like once we've resolved to dream, um, you know, ideas are, you know, a dime a dozen, but like action and executing against that is something that is different, and I would say probably um, less common. So like once we've started to dream again, like where do you suggest we go from there? What comes next?
Yeah. So dreams are like a 30,000 foot view. You're looking at from the airplane view. You have an idea of who David is or who Graham is. But the next step is to get really clear on outcomes. And so the E in Rebel, the first E is to establish the outcomes you want in life. And this is really all about vision. And we do this in all aspects of business a lot of times. It's like, what are the goals? Where are we trying to go as a company? Where are we trying to see it? But we rarely do this well or effectively or in a fun way for our lives. And I think that's where we miss it because we try to compartmentalize, well, this is my business stuff, this is my life stuff. I think it all intertwines. And so I like to look at, again, the whole person. So the question I like to ask, and I pose it in the book, is the best 3 years question, which if we bump into each other 3 years from now, and I'm like, David, I haven't seen you since I was on your podcast 3 years ago. How the heck are you? And you tell me, Graham, this has been the best 3 years of my life. And I'm like, dude, that's awesome. Tell me what's happened. What's up? And you start to list things. What would you be telling me about? What would have to be true for you to tell me that it has been, past tense, the best 3 years of your life. And it just, there's a focusing agent in that question that's very unique to like whatever comes up for you. It might not even be around your business. It might be around your marriage. Like, dude, well, me and my husband are getting along again. Like we're actually having fun. Or my kids talk to me again. Or we paid off all the bills that have been nagging me. Or I hit this level in business. Or, I finally went to Italy. If I went to Italy, like whatever comes up is what's subconsciously there on the surface. And if you just did the 50 dreams exercise, that's kind of priming you for some of this. Because some of those dreams maybe you don't care about, but some of them you really do. And if it were the best 3 years of your life, and it's been if 3 years from now, whatever comes up for you is what you want to get really clear on. Those are the outcomes that you're trying to shoot for then. And 3 years is a really important time frame because it's reachable. Like 10 years is so far down the road, hard to be motivated for a 10-year goal. Plus, your life is going to be totally different in 10 years. I don't even know who I was 10 years ago, let alone 10 years from now. So I can't predict. And 1 year is like, this is the year I'm going to change everything. It's just too much to change your whole life in a year. But 3 years is close enough to your actual season of life, close enough that you can sort of see some things that are in motion, that how it might turn out. So you can kind of forecast with some accuracy of what's possible in 3 years. And then at the same time, I mean, you and I both know we could do a lot of damage in 36 months. Like we could completely transform our marriages in 36 months. You could completely transform your body in 36 months, your business. Like you can really be a different person in 3 years. And so I find that this question and that prompt gets people so much more clarity on what they actually want. Whereas one person might say, I had a client of mine say, before we started working together, man, I want to be making $100,000 a month. I said, that's great. What a great goal. But before we get on our first call, I want you to do this 3 years exercise. And so he came to the first call and I was like, all right, I want to tell me everything that you wrote down for that 3 years exercise. He said, dude, I can tell you a lot of things, but the number one thing I realized once I did this exercise was that I actually don't want or need $100,000 a month to live the life that I want. Because everything I wrote down actually doesn't cost nearly as much as that. And I realized, why am I still living in Knoxville, Tennessee, where I don't want to live? We keep vacationing to 30A in Florida, and that's where I'd rather just live there all the time, like on the beach. And so we're going to sell our house. We're going to move there. And he realized nothing had to actually change about his life to be able to do what he wanted life to look like, spend more time with his family, have his wife work with him in the business. He just he just kept chasing a number or a goal, and he's driven. And that's why he's done well in life. But this was bigger than a goal. This was like, who are you in 3 years, if it's been your best 3 years? And like all these things came to light for him. And so he just made changes instantly. And that's the power of the question.
You really challenged me with the time frame on that, Graham, when I encountered that 36 months. I have an exercise and a model that I bring real estate agents through specifically when they're hiring and they are building a team. And one of those interviews is called the motivational interview. And it really has a lot of that same focusing mechanism that you just talked about. We typically use a 5 year time frame, but I really thought about modifying it for a 3 year. And what we do is we encourage agents to put both the job dimension and the financial dimension, and then allow whoever they're bringing into their organization to pick two other high values for them. Maybe it's family or faith or wellness or whatever. And we go through that almost the same exact series of questions. The first one is a mirror of what you just said. It's hey, we're sitting here 5 years from now and you describe your life as awesome. What does the job dimension look like? And it is like, dude, I will tell you, it is so powerful, like you're saying. And so I just was so excited when you were talking about this and teaching this model, because I'm like, yes, it's showing up everywhere, and it works, and it's helpful. And from a hiring perspective, what I love about it the most, Graham, is that it also like challenges me as a leader not to bring someone into my world that, like, once they get clear on those 3 to 5 years, like if I can't do that for them, or that's not where the organization's going, like my job as a leader, as I see it, is to, hey, we need to exit, we hit the eject button right now,
Mm-hmm.
because what you're going after is not in alignment with where we're going.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
next
it's,
level. That's good.
you know what I mean? And so I got really excited when you started uh teaching that. Dude, what do you think's the biggest obstacle to someone like living out this lifestyle of being a rebel?
Man, there's a couple. I mean, one of them is just your circle of influence. I mean, there's a current that's pulling all of us, and so if it's your friends, if it's the people you hang out with after work, if it's even the team you work with, even your church community. I mean, they don't mean it, but if they're playing a small game and if they want you to be like them, even if they don't realize it or say it or express it, that will keep you swimming, downstream with them when you want to swim upstream. So it's usually sort of subtle pressure from people, and the culture at large. But I honestly think we're the biggest culprit. I think that the lies we tell ourselves, or the way I put it in the book, is sort of the narrative in our head, the inner story that we're telling ourselves is the culprit. And we all are telling ourselves a story. We have thoughts going 24/7, and I've heard different studies that maybe as high as 97% of your thoughts every day are memory. So it's just thoughts you thought yesterday or the day before, like they're not new thoughts. So you're really just reliving the same thing unless you put in new input. So we're just kind of stuck in a thought. And so it's like, how do some people achieve incredible things and love their life and some people don't? And it's rarely circumstances. It's more of, this is why mindset work is so powerful. It's more of the story that they tell themselves, that the people that think anything's possible, or I could change this, or I deserve to try something different or something better. They're going to almost get that. And the people that say, I don't deserve this, it's not possible, it's too late for me, I'm not smart enough to, whatever that story is, they're not going to have the life they want. And the beautiful thing is that can be changed, but it can't be changed unless you acknowledge that there is this loud default narrative that you're telling yourself about your business, like your income. I coached a guy who came to a mastermind event I did here in Tampa, and he was on the whiteboard. He was drawing up sort of the timeline of his business, and he'd kind of built it and it imploded, and he built it and it imploded, and he's rebuilt it a couple times, and he was just drawing. And I noticed, I was like, stopped him halfway through. I was like, bro, do you realize that when you draw it out like that, that each time you rebuilt your business, it went up to $300,000 a year. And then when you collapsed and rebuilt it, it was right around $300,000 a year again, 2 years later, when you rebuilt it. Like, there's a theme here that you're capping out at $300,000 a year in an industry where the guy right next to him who does the same kind of thing is doing seven figures. And I was like, you're both equally as talented. You both are in the same industry. But this one guy, you're a $300,000 guy in your mind, not in real life, but that's the story you maybe haven't thought about, but you probably feel comfortable and safe and like, yeah, I can do 300K. And so that's all you end up doing. So, and he started to cry. He'd never
Mm.
seen it before. And even looking at the whiteboard and seeing it like that, he's like, yeah, I keep peaking at the same place. But for him, it was an unlock of, wow, I must be subtly telling myself a story that that's who I am and that's about all I deserve. And he said, if I'm honest, if I try to view myself as $1 million a year guy or whatever, even a $600,000 a year guy, double, he's like, that actually makes me nervous because I don't know if I know how to get to 600,000 or a million. I was like, well, that's a very honest and fair point. So it's really, there's a fear there, and you're actually more comfortable with a 300K identity because that's doable for you. And all of us have our doable level of impact or whatever it is, even level of intimacy with our spouse, whatever we're comfortable with, that's probably all it'll get to unless we really can learn new tools and have the courage to go deeper in our intimacy, which is scary because it's not comfortable, but there could be more joy on the other side of it. So I really think it comes back to identity. And that's a story. I think we all tell ourselves a story. I do it too. I was in the music space, crushing it on YouTube, online, the largest channel in my niche, like 650,000 subscribers on YouTube. Very happy, very comfortable. But my heart, my desire, my dream was to coach business. And because people kept coming to me, how did you build this business? I don't care about the music, but I'm really interested in the model. And I was like, bro, this would be way more impactful to teach people this business model, set them free. And so that's what I want to do. But I punted for 2 years before I started this personal brand teaching business because I was like, but am I really a business coach guy? I'm comfortable. I'm the music guy. And it was just fear because I didn't want to fail, because I didn't want to find out that I wasn't good enough, or because I didn't want people to judge me. And so I think all of us have a story. That was I had to get over that and start to tell myself, no, I am a business coach. For me, I had to actually put a website up there and post it on Facebook. Graham, the business coach, for me to see it and go, oh, okay, I guess I'm a business coach because I said it on the internet. And that was a huge unlock for me because it's all just really how you view yourself. And it's not fake it till you make it, but it is tell yourself a better story if you want a different outcome.
It's not fake it till you make it. It's tell yourself a different story until you get to a different outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I heard it once said, one of my mentors told me, nobody talks to you more than you talk to you. So it's really important what you're talking to yourself about. And that
Yeah.
I think I was probably around 19 years old when he encouraged me. And you know, it's something that I think, like a lot of other people, I think we all struggle with it to some degree. But that always is ringing in my mind. Like how what am I telling myself? What am I feeding myself? Because yeah, I agree with you that the biggest limiter is ourself. And I think followed closely because by the people around us. You say in the book, when you choose to be different and start to dream again, people will try to pull you down, even though they don't know why. And I think man, that just rings true. I think there's a lot of people that they don't even know why they're doing it, but they just like they know they don't want you to go there for some reason. And
Isn't that
I don't know
weird?
if there's, yeah, I don't know if there's a lot of like, prescriptions to that other than changing the dynamic of those relationships. You know, I'm
Well,
not
it's a huge part
necessarily,
of what you do. And sorry to interrupt. It's a huge part of what you do with team building and then even coaching and whether it's events or masterminds. Like if you don't have anybody that thinks like this and will affirm your desire to dream big or try something different, that you will collapse because it's hard to do it on your own. Very few people, it's like, unless you're the Elon Musks or the Jeff Bezoses of the world, they're like, I don't care what anybody says, I'm going to go to Mars. Like most people aren't like that. You need some people in your corner, even if your family or close friends don't understand it yet. You need at least to get another group that you can be around or listening to the podcast like this, where you realize, okay, I'm not the only person out there that wants different, that wants to try something new. And so that's the support you need, even if it's a remote mentor, even if it's a book. That's why I read books because I realize these authors, they're pioneers. They've gone and done something. Hopefully, if they're a thought leader, they're leading through new original thoughts those thoughts have come from experience. And so I realized, man, everyone, like all the books on my shelf, these people have done great things in their lives. They're world changers. And so maybe they don't know me personally, but I could read their book and realize I'm not the only crazy person out there. Like that old Apple ad. Here's for the misfits and the rebels and the crazy ones. Um, you need someone else to make you feel less crazy, and it's huge.
yeah. Yeah, this is like super tactical, a little bit off topic, but someone said to me yesterday that the biographies of great business people are 10 times better than any like self-help business books because you're really getting into the real lived experience of these people. And I was like, man, yeah, it's been a while since I've dove
Mm.
into some of those and learned from that perspective. And so maybe if you're listening out there, even that tidbit change in reading habits might help. Graham, for a couple minutes here, I want to change the subject a little bit from the book, and I hope we really like whet people's appetite for your rebel framework. And I want you guys all to pick up the book. We are definitely going to link it up in the show notes. But I want to ask you a couple questions about your own business. Like, you have a thriving personal brand, and your business now is coaching other people, specifically in the online space. And I've just had this question in my mind for you around you go from performing on the stage mainly to, I assume, and maybe it's incorrect, but I assume a lot of your life is lived by yourself in a studio.
Yep.
What's that been like? Like, take us into that journey a little bit.
I mean, it works for me because I lean more introverted when you test for that kind of stuff. I work well by myself. I could not see somebody for days and just be banging out stuff, and I'd be like, this is great. I don't need the other people around me. I'll get distracted actually if they're there. So it's probably personality wise, it works well for me. But the way I view it, it's just like me being back in my room as a high schooler playing guitar, like coming home from school, throwing my backpack down, close the door of my bedroom, pull out my guitar, and just like spend hours like figuring out a Stone Temple Pilots or a Soundgarden song or something like that. Like I'm just creating stuff by myself in my room. It's just the difference is it's not related to music nowadays, and it's my business. But yeah, I think it works well for me. But I get the energy from people. That's one reason why I go to events, both as an attendee and as a speaker. That's why I love coaching people, whether it's one on one or in my group coaching programs. Like I like the live interaction. I like seeing how people think. I like problem solving in real time. I like hearing how people are processing either what I've taught them or whatever they're doing that's working for them. I love learning. I could sit at a table, even though I speak for a living, I could sit at a table and just keep my mouth shut for hours and just feel like I like wisdom. So if anyone's smart, I'll just keep my mouth shut and listen because I want to grow. But yeah, I think there's two types of people, and when it comes to online business, those that know they need to be around people, I think they should have teammates or a partner or work in a co-working space. That would drive me nuts. I'm so much more efficient. I like to get in, bang out my stuff for the day, and get home and be with the fam. And I don't even stop because I just get so dialed in, and it's just for me, it's creating, it's fun.
Hmm. We're sitting here in 2025, and you coach a lot of business owners, different industries, different verticals. But I'm curious, as we sit here right now, is there a common um, intersection of people's businesses and like places you see where they are missing the monetization opportunity? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, so you got, in my opinion, there's two groups of people that are missing it. So you've got the people that are influencers online, massive followings, and then you have people that aren't online enough or yet, or don't really know what to do with it. So like I don't know as many real estate agents as you do, but I know a lot of them are like, what would I do with being online? I'm not really sure. There's those people that are like, I should be doing something on social. I'm not really sure what that is. And then you've got the other extreme, which is the people with a million followers. And both, I think, are missing the best monetization models because the influencer model, which is what a lot of people think I do, they think, oh, you make content, you get a lot of views, whether it's on YouTube or Instagram, and then you get ad revenue if it's on YouTube because they run ads before your video, or you do brand deals or sponsorships and you get paid 20K, 50K to mention vitamin water inside of a video. This is brought to you by whatever. That's a really risky model. You can make some great money if you have a huge following, but there's two problems. One, you need a massive following, and two, you need to keep them watching. And those are two very different skills. It's hard to build a massive following. It's even harder to keep them watching because you only get paid by the view, not how many subscribers you have. It's like, can you keep them watching the next video and the next video? And that's why you see people making clickbaity stuff, see people saying the same thing over and over again a million times because they have to just figure out what keeps people watching. That's an exhausting model. And what the private conversations I'm having is those influencers are burning out. They're coming to me saying like, I made a crap ton of money online. This is not sustainable. Do you do something different? I'm like, yes, I do something very different. I have my own products and services. So the way I think people should use online is to build trust. Online, whether it's LinkedIn or Instagram or YouTube or a podcast like this, the whole point of doing content is it's what I call like a trust funnel. It's like a sales funnel, but you're not optimizing for sales, you're optimizing for trust building. And so you basically share whatever you possibly can share for the right audience that hopefully is going to be your ideal customer. So if you know who you ideally want to work with you, for me, I wanted musicians who wanted to hire me to mix their records in the olden days. So I made content that helped them know what equipment to buy to record their own music so they could get it halfway there. And then they realized this is really hard. I'm just going to hire Graham to finish it. But I knew who I wanted to attract. So I made content for them and I built trust with them. And I told them everything. I even taught them how to do what I would do. And they realized it was still hard to do and they would still hire me. But you teach, you share, you look at current events, you bring ideas. You're a true thought leader, not an information retailer, someone who's selling it. We're leading through thoughts, and you do it for free to build a bit of a following, build some credibility, so that when you say, hey, I've got a house I'm listing, or hey, if you're looking for someone to sell your house, or hey, I've got a book I just wrote, or hey, I'm speaking, or hey, I've got an online course, or hey, I opened up a new community for real estate agents, or hey, whatever it is, that's a paid thing, something that you own and control. All these people trust you, they know you, they like you, and they're like, wow, that's really, really cool. If his free stuff is this good, I wonder what his paid stuff is like. And so I'm not getting paid by advertisers. I'm not getting paid by brands. I'm selling my own online courses, my own books, my own coaching services, whether it's private or group, whatever it is, I'm selling my own thing. The margins are better, but it involves giving so much away to begin with. But that's the beauty of it, is that you optimize for trust, and then however you want to monetize it, but usually through some kind of digital community or product, or even if you just attach your personal brand to your brick and mortar service or product. This is the path forward, I think, for all brick and mortar people. Is you stand out by virtue of being a thought leader, by virtue of having a book that you wrote, or by virtue of having a podcast. Like, who else is doing that in the industry? Like, plenty of people, but not nearly enough. So you can then begin to be viewed as smarter and more trustworthy than the rest. And one example I think about with realtors is years ago when we moved from Virginia to Tampa. I didn't know any realtors in Tampa to look for a house. So I Googled, and I was Googling real estate, just like neighborhoods in Tampa. What are the best neighborhoods to live in Tampa? And I found a guy who had a great blog, and he was reviewing all the neighborhoods. And of course, he was a real estate agent, and he had a free guide to like all the neighborhoods in Tampa you could download. And so I downloaded that, but that put me on his mailing list. And then he was updating me every week with like, neighborhood reports, housing prices, what's happening. And so by the time I got down to Tampa, who did I call to show me houses? I called that guy
Yeah.
because I saw him all the time, and he helped me for free. And there's a million great agents. I don't know if he was good, but he's the one I called because he had built trust with me just by being out there. And he didn't sell anything digital. He just sold his normal services. But it was a brilliant way to show up online where I was looking, and then to add value to me when I needed it. So that when I was ready to do business, he was ready to work with me.
I think the takeaway there for any agent or listener, period, is just online is about scaling trust. And I think if we approached our personal brand and our online presence like that and just ask every day, what is the one thing I can do to scale trust within my neighborhood or wherever I'm selling into, like that is what's going to lead to better conversion. That's super helpful, man. I want to ask three questions really quick. I end every single episode, Graham, with the same three questions. I call it 3, 2, 1 action. And I haven't prepared you for these questions, so you're on the hot seat a little bit. But I want to ask first off, other than your own book, what book has been most influential on your business and why?
There'd be two. There would be the Bible, written by the OG God Himself. Uh, there's
The
just so much
OG,
wisdom. Yeah,
God.
the God. Man, even if you just take the book of Proverbs alone and read a chapter a day, there's 31 chapters in Proverbs. Read one each day of the month. There's so much wisdom. And King Solomon, who wrote most of those Proverbs, was a brilliant entrepreneur and leader. And it's like if you just slow down and read it, you realize, oh my gosh, like this is brilliant. So I get so much uh, valuable wisdom, practical for my business from the Bible. Um, and I know I have a lot of friends that aren't even people of faith, and they do the same thing. They read the Bible and apply its principles. It's a reason why it works. And then a more modern book would be The Go Giver by Bob Berg, John David Mann. Probably the most gifted book I've ever gifted people and recommended book. Tiny little parable. It's about sales, so it's perfect for the real estate space. You can read it in about an hour. But for me, this is my worldview in life and business is generosity. The more you give, the more people you help, the bigger your business grows, your influence grows. And it's a beautiful, practical story of how that can work in the real world. And I read it usually once a year because it inspires the mess out of me.
That's awesome. I love the Go Giver. It's so good, and I should probably give it more. That
Yeah,
would
there you go.
probably be a good application of the book. Question number two, and I asked this one carefully. I used to ask who is the most influential person in your business, but I've changed it up, and I want to ask you this: it could be like all-time greatest influence on your life and business or someone that is influencing you right now. But if you could thank one person for their impact on your life or business right now publicly, who would that be?
Mm, that's a great question, man. You know, there's so many. Um, but one that I would thank right now, believe it or not, is Tim Ferriss. When I read the 4 Hour Work Week the first time it came out in 2007, I read it on a lunch break when I stole away from a corporate job I hated to Barnes and Noble to look for a way to get out of my miserable life. And there was this book on the shelf called The 4 Hour Work Week: How You Could Escape the 9 to 5 and Live Anywhere and Join the New Rich. And I was like, that's exactly what I needed. And I bought the book, I started reading it, and then I returned it a week later because I was like, this is a bunch of garbage. This is like a fairy tale. Like, this isn't real. There's no way this is real. And the funny story is that 2 years later, when I lost my job and I started my business, I rebought the book and I read it from a totally different perspective. And I was like, no, wait a second. I'm the fairy tale. I'm the one who's like, this guy's figured something out. And what I would say to Tim, and I've reached out to his team before in the past, but uh, what I love about that book more than anything, even if you don't like him or his brash writing style, or most of the book is irrelevant to a lot of people, he challenges a lot of preconceived notions in the book. And the biggest one for me is that making a lot of money is the point. And he's like, no, owning your time is the point. So that you can live the life you want to live is the point. And there's a million different ways to own your time and provide income. And he got me to think bigger and think differently, and not even worry about how big the business was going, but always guarding my time. And he really beat into my head the 80/20 principle more than anybody else. And then Parkinson's law, which is that work expands to fill the time you give it. And he was like, bro, if you give yourself impossibly short deadlines, you end up getting a lot of stuff done really fast. And so those I have used the principles in the first section of that book every day of my life since 2009 when I reread it. And it's not I mean, he's a super popular book, but he's not a relevant person in that space as much as he once was. And even back then, it was a controversial book. But I think he's the person I have to thank the most for the way I started to think about my business. Like, oh, I don't want to work all the time. Oh, I don't have to work all the time. I want to build for quality of life. And the irony is, I have only made more money by building this way. It actually hasn't prohibited me from scaling. It's only allowed me to scale better because it's forced me to ask better questions. Well, how could I make an extra $1 million and only work 1 extra hour a week? Like, those are crazy questions,
Yeah,
but it's amazing what is possible when you ask better questions. And I really have him to thank for that.
I love that. Well, thank you, Tim Ferriss. My third question's a quick one, but I alluded to this earlier. Ideas, are plentiful. Action is super important. So, based on our conversation today, if you could challenge my listeners to just go out there and take action on one thing, what would you challenge them with?
I would say whatever your biggest fear or roadblock is right now in life or business, I would tackle that story and write it down and say, whatever it is you believe is true about, I can't ever reach this income level, or the economy is so bad, or my season of life prohibits me from whatever your story is, the one that's coming up for you during this whole conversation. It's like, write that down and then ask yourself one question. What else could be as true, if not more true, than that statement? Because it might be true. You might be right, but at least allow yourself to consider something else that could be as true, if not more true than that statement. And that would be a great step to beginning to get curious.
Graham, this has been so awesome for me, selfishly, getting to spend the last hour with you, and for my listeners. They're going to absolutely love this episode. I can't wait for so many of you guys to pick up the book. Hey, if they want more Graham Cochrane content, what's the best place to find you?
Yeah, on Instagram is at the Graham Cochrane. Otherwise, check out the Graham Cochrane Show anywhere you enjoy your podcasts.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for spending time with me. Guys, this has been another episode of Real Talk with David. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have, feel free to share this episode with someone else whose life could be changed by my conversation with Graham. And as always, I hope you go out and take action on this and play all in in whatever it is that you do.